The sky is falling. The Delta variant has arrived, and it is coming for you and your family. Well, that's the new refrain, at least, we're hearing from the Fauci-ites. So if you thought against COVID-19 the fight was over, it's not. I've got some bad news for you, but we'll dive into what's really going on here on Hold the Line.
We seem, as was the case with B117, we seem to be following the pattern with the Delta variant, with a doubling time of about 2 weeks. If you look from the May 8th with 1.2 to 2.7 to 9.9, and as of a couple of days ago, 20.6% of the isolates are Delta. Similar to the situation in the UK, the Delta variant is currently the greatest threat in the U.S. to our attempt to eliminate COVID-19.
Welcome to Hold the Line. I'm Buck Sexton. Fauci's back. You thought maybe you were going to be free of him, right? You thought that we would get past that point in our lives where we'd have to hear from that little lab coat totalitarian smurf. No, he's still out there, still telling us that now, if only we listen to the public health measures, we'll all be safe. It'll all be fine. Meanwhile, there's some questions out there that we're going to try to answer today about, well, what really is different about this situation than what we've seen before? And why is there this moment of panic that we're being induced into from the media? What exactly is going on? Well, Joe Biden, as you know, is playing a large part in this. He is the president of the United States. He has an enormous platform. He has the ability to influence people's thinking perhaps more than anyone else on this, with the exception of Fauci. And here's what he put out as a tweet today. Here's the deal, Biden wrote, or his staff, his handlers, whomever. The Delta variant is more contagious, it's deadlier, and it's spreading quickly around the world, leaving young, unvaccinated people more vulnerable than ever. Please get vaccinated if you haven't already. Let's head off this strain before it's too late. Now, we've been getting vaccinations in this country for many months now. It's really 6 months of vaccination. So at this stage, anybody who has not been vaccinated has essentially chosen not to get vaccinated. It costs nothing in this country. Plenty of places have it. We've had many, many months here. So those who are deciding not to do it, well, that's their choice. That's their call. But let's just look at the facts here as they pertain to this Delta variant, as we're all supposed to be so frightened of it, so terrified. Here you go. The Delta variant, according to Twitter just yesterday, here you go. The Delta variant is more transmissible, this is from Twitter's sort of news service, than other variants, but evidence is lacking on whether it will make people sicker than the others, according to doctors and medical experts. In fact, what we are likely to see here, because we've had this with other very similar fears of a strain that was going to be so much more dangerous, is that it's probably about the same as what COVID has been. It may be a little bit more easily transmitted. That certainly seems to be the case. But is it much more lethal? There's no reason really to believe that. They just tell you that that's the case because they want to make sure that everybody gets vaccinated in this one last big push before the push over booster shots and further variants down the line change the whole conversation about all of this. But some are not waiting to see even what the data tells them. Some are going back to the old lockdowner mentality. For example, in Los Angeles County, they are urging everyone to mask up because of the Delta variant, even the vaccinated. Now, let's be very clear about this. Why would vaccinated people need to mask up? What are the chances of a vaccinated person getting this and or giving it? Very, very slim. How well do masks even really work? You know, we're at this stage where people just want to move past it, and I understand that, but given what we've seen in this country, given what the data tells us from places that had mask mandates versus those that had either lesser or no mask mandate in place, depending on the period of the pandemic, what data do we really have to suggest that masks actually stop the spread of COVID-19 or even play a major role in stopping the spread? Vaccines certainly do. Vaccines work. There's no question about that. Do masks? Are we even allowed to ask the question now? Probably not. They would much rather you just obey. You do exactly what you've been told to do all along. And even Dr. Fauci is out there to let everyone know, if you're vaccinated, sure, you can still wear a mask. Why not?
The CDC recommendations have not changed, Joe. If you are fully vaccinated, you can go without a mask indoor and outdoor. There are going to be people who at their own discretion are going to say, you know, I'm an elderly person, I have an underlying condition, I'm risk averse, even though the general recommendation is you don't have to wear a mask. I'm deciding I want to wear a mask. Joe, there's nothing wrong with that. That's individual decision.
But you see, it was an individual decision when we were all told we had to do it. But now that it's absurd, they want to make sure there's plenty of room for people to make silly decisions. Remember, it's one thing if we all agreed that masking was some great way to prevent the spread of this, but there are a lot of us who looked at what happened and look at what they told us would be the case over the course of this pandemic when it came to masks and say, how could any person really believe that these things were effective in any meaningful way? But the scientific establishment still clings to this. They still hold to this belief as though it's a major preventative measure, when at best you could say it was minor in the grand scheme of things, and perhaps it was actually effectively nothing. But this is a deeply politicized discussion, as you know. It has been all along. Americans who see little risk in a 4th of July celebration, when you take a look at this data, it shows you exactly what's going on here. Republicans, 76% of us are fine with it. Even a solid majority of independents, 58%, think that it's fine to celebrate 4th of July, Independence Day weekend celebrations. Democrats, less than half still. Less than half of Democrats. What is it about Democrats that, as a group, they uniformly seem to have so much less interest in dealing with the risks as they are? Why are they all so much more scared of COVID? In contravention at this point, or contradicting the actual guidance from the CDC, which is that if you are vaccinated, you are effectively able to live your life all over again. I'm assuming those Democrats who are still very worried are all vaccinated. So why are they doing this? There is a madness in this country. It has gripped many millions of Americans for over a year now, and they have not been able to wrest themselves away from it. They have not been able to get to a point where they're no longer in some state of hysteria over the threat of COVID-19, even after they're vaccinated, even after the numbers have dropped tremendously. This fight is not over, friends. We will continue to wage it. All right, New York City's Democratic mayoral primary has been thrown into chaos after the city's election board accidentally published erroneous election results. After the break, New York Post political reporter David Marcus is going to join us to discuss this snafu and the current state of that race. Stay with us. If you ever thought about investing in real estate, I want you to take me up on this recommendation right now. Visit doneforyoubuck.com, where you can learn more about my friends at Done For You Real Estate. If you haven't checked them out yet, let me make this easy for you. These guys have found a way to make real estate investing straightforward, and their system flat out works. I know because I'm using it successfully. It allows everyday, hardworking Americans like you and me to finally own investment real estate without all the risk and difficulty of doing it on your own. I can't possibly tell you in strong enough terms during this 60-second commercial how important it is that you check these guys out. So how about this? If you visit doneforyoubuck.com, at the top of the page is a podcast interview I did with Done For Your Real Estate, where you can hear my personal experience with their company in my own words. I'll tell you about it in detail, from picking the city, the house, getting the broker, the loan, even getting a tenant in place. So now I have cash flow coming to me every month. Visit doneforyoubuck.com now. Listen to that podcast interview at the top of the page and give my friends at Done For Your Real Estate a chance to show you what they can do for you. New York City election officials published updated vote tallies in the city's Democratic mayoral primary yesterday. The data showed the race had dramatically tightened, with Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams losing most of his lead to former Sanitation Commissioner Catherine Garcia. There was just one problem. The new totals were totally wrong. After the Adams campaign publicly questioned the new data, the Board of Elections withdrew the new totals acknowledging that it had accidentally included 135,000 test ballots in its new tabulation. All right, joining me now to help break down what happened is political reporter for the New York Post, David Marcus. David, good to see you.
Nice to see you, Buck.
All right, let's just dive into this, man. What's going on here? I mean, I thought questioning elections would get you in big trouble, but this election deserves to be questioned right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think the bottom line is that this experiment in ranked choice voting was clearly a disastrous mess, really for two reasons. One, just the very fact that it takes weeks to figure out who won is fairly ridiculous. But two, the Democrats, I think, are going to dodge a kind of a disaster here because I do believe, and from the reporting that I've done and the people I've spoken to, I think Adams will hold on. But while Democrats are focused on the idea of Republicans disenfranchising black voters in places like Georgia and Texas, here in New York City, Adams overwhelmingly won the working class black vote in the outer boroughs. And this system very nearly took that election away from him and his voters. It's something that's going to have to be addressed.
I mean, David, the initial reaction by some reporters to Adams' statement questioning the new data was essentially mockery. I mean, for example, New York Times reporter Dana Rubenstein said his statement, quote, goes there. And Ian Millhiser of Vox called it some Trump blank. We can't say what it was, but you can figure that out. Turns out he was right. What do you make of that knee-jerk reaction?
Well, I think that latter tweet was eventually deleted, as I guess it should have been. Yeah, I mean, look, there were always going to be comparisons to the election of 2020 and what's happening here. And it is remarkable to watch these people not only have to walk back their statements in regards to Adams, but also I think more broadly their statements about how election fraud doesn't happen and irregularities don't occur. This is all a GOP boogeyman. Election irregularities happen all the time. I mean, this is not actually all that rare. It's unique because it's happening in the context of the ranked choice voting. But that whole reaction to Republicans questioning the results of the 2020 election has clearly been overblown. And they tried to sort of paint Adams the same way, and it blew up in their face.
I mean, how do you think this is going to affect people's trust in the ultimate outcome of the mayor's race in New York City?
That's a very good question. I mean, I don't know. I think we're going to have to do a deep dive into how people voted. I mean, did everyone really understand this ranked choice voting where you could fill out 5 different candidates? I mean, was that slanted towards one direction, more towards progressives and less towards, I don't want to call Adams a conservative, but a more sort of police-friendly, I guess, option like Adams? I don't see how New Yorkers can have much faith in this system as it stands right now. And I mean, I don't know if they can go back to the old system, but they've got to do something because this is a ridiculous mess.
Are we expecting also there'll be any continued objections or maybe even questioning of the ultimate results from Catherine Garcia, or I know Maya Wiley's technically out now, right? But Garcia is still supposed to be in the mix here. Are they making noise? Are they going to contest this?
I think it depends. I mean, if, you know, the way this works, and I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but the last place candidate gets erased, right? And their second place vote then goes to whoever that is. So it's going to take a while of eliminating last place candidates until somebody gets to over 50%. If we get to the point where Wiley is eliminated and her second choice votes are going to Garcia, yeah, I mean, you could see a total mess. I hope that doesn't happen for the sake of the city, but I mean, it absolutely could. Only time will tell.
And how much do you think this election is really being used as a microcosm, perhaps, of both the defund the police narrative that's out there nationwide and how it seems to be taking a turn in the other direction for Democrats, but also just about whether there's a basis for questioning election processes and having some concerns that maybe there are issues and problems?
Yeah, to the latter point, I think this absolutely legitimizes concerns about the elections. And I think to your first point, as far as what Democrats are going to learn from this, Adams was the most, again, I don't want to use this word, but the most conservative candidate that there was, and did quite well, especially among minority voters. This comes at the same time as we've seen some remarkable poll numbers for Kristen Sinema, a Democrat out in Arizona, who's polling really well with both Democrats and Republicans. And she is also a much more moderate candidate. So I do think that Democrats are going to want to look at this and really question whether the squad is the direction that they want to go. It's not clear if the media is quite ready to abandon AOC yet, though.
One just point of curiosity, David. People always refer to the New York City Board of Elections as though it's like worse than the DMV on its worst day, and it's such a mess, and people will throw out, nepotism and ineptitude and all these. What's going on there? I mean, how hard is it for the biggest city in America to have a Board of Elections that is reasonably efficient or on it?
I mean, I think it's hard for all big cities, and most big cities are Democratic run. I mean, in part because these really are the patronage jobs. I mean, nobody's a little kid and thinks to themselves, when I grow up, I want to be on the Board of Elections. I mean, maybe somebody does, but not many people. So these really are jobs that tend to go to political flunkies or friends or family or these kinds of things. So, yeah, look, I mean, that's been a problem for 100 years. It's probably going to be a problem for the next 100 years.
David Marcus of the New York Post. Congrats on the new gig, by the way. Good to see you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Heartbreaking new images are emerging from the southern border as the crisis there continues unabated. After the break, the Vice President of the National Border Patrol Council, Chris Cabrera, is going to join us to give an update on what's actually happening down at the border. If you're anything like me, you have to start your day with a healthy dose of caffeine, and that means kicking off the morning with Black Rifle coffee. I mean, not only is this some of the most delicious coffee I've ever tasted, Black Rifle is a veteran-owned company that serves premium coffee to people who love America. Black Rifle is continually committed to supporting veteran law enforcement and first responder causes. This summer, Black Rifle invites you to enjoy your coffee. Not just the great taste, of course, but also the places you drink it, the passion and adventure it fuels and inspires, and the entertainment that Black Rifle serves along the way. Whether you're brewing the perfect cup of pour-over before kicking ass at work or cracking a can of 300 on your next backcountry mission, Black Rifle Coffee Company is here to fuel your way wherever the summer takes you. Black Rifle Coffee imports its high-quality coffee beans from all over the world and roasts 5 days a week at their facilities in Manchester, Tennessee and Salt Lake City, Utah. The team at Black Rifle Coffee is continually researching and experimenting with new roasting methods and coffee origins. Go get some today. BlackRifleCoffee.com/Buck. Use code BUCK at checkout for 20% off your purchase and your first coffee club order. Fuel your summer with America's coffee, Black Rifle Coffee. Another heartbreaking image coming out of the U.S. Mexico border. Mexican officials finding a 2-year-old boy abandoned by the side of the road, shirtless and surrounded by trash. This comes amid a growing push for Republicans to mount their own response as the Biden administration refuses to take necessary action. About 2 months ago, I visited the border to witness the crisis firsthand. We were led by Vice President of the National Border Patrol Council, Chris Cabrera. We saw hundreds of migrant crossings in the time we were there. Chris says the number of people crossing has only escalated. He joins us now with an update on what's happening on the ground. Chris, good to see you again.
Likewise, good to see you.
So I was with you, and again, thank you for giving us that up close and personal view of what's happening down in the McAllen area and the Rio Grande sector of the border. But what are you seeing over the last few months? I mean, what is the situation since I was down there with you?
You know, when you all came last time, it was the majority of it was people that were turning themselves in. We had some people that were trying to get away, but the vast majority was turning themselves into one particular area. And now those areas have spread out considerably. and we're having a lot of people that are trying to get away. And that's not just delegated to the hours of darkness where they can conceal themselves easier. We're having multiple smuggling attempts in broad daylight, 2 or 3 vehicles pulling up, 15, 20, 30 people jumping in these vehicles and taking off at a high rate of speed in full view of the agents, because they know the agents are occupied and they physically can't get over there since they're already dealing with some people that have turned themselves in.
What are expectations for the numbers? I mean, I know, there are crazy numbers that have been coming out. I mean, record-setting numbers in recent months. But from May to June, for example, in your sector, are the numbers still at that level? Are they going up? Are they going down?
They seem to be, at least based on the shifts that I'm working, it seems to be we're getting busier on our shifts. And one thing we're starting to see a little more is more and more unaccompanied children now. I don't know if that's going to kind of balance out throughout the Border Patrol, but in our area, we seem to be seeing more and more unaccompanied children. Those numbers seem to increase on a daily basis.
What is it right now that you're hearing? Is there any difference in the stories that the migrants that are crossing, the ones particularly that are surrendering themselves? I mean, they're all of the belief that they're going to be able to stay in the country essentially? I mean, what's driving this continuing surge as you're seeing it?
Yeah, and what it is just the rhetoric. Yeah, it's the policies that are in place. If we're allowing people to stay, we did away with not all, but most of the Remain in Mexico policy. So these people know that they come in, they say a couple of key words, and we're going to let them stay. We're going to have to let them stay. And if they do away with Title 42, which is keeping the folks we are sending back, that's going to keep them from getting sent back, and that's just going to compound our problems.
Do we have some sense as to what, even if it's a rough percentage, what percentage of those who are apprehended at the border right now that are entering illegally are in fact released into the U.S. interior versus how many are turned back? Do we have some sense of that?
Yeah, I've heard the administration say it's something like 40% are getting released, 60% returned. Based on what I've seen here and the numbers I've seen here, I think that number is reversed, and we're letting the vast majority go. And it's the small minority that is getting sent back to Mexico.
So 6 months after leaving office, Trump visited the border, and here's the statement. He was down there today. The statement that he put out, and we could show everybody. He says, heading to the southern border, which has never in our country's long history been worse. We have the most successful border policy in American history, and now we have by far the least successful policy. People are coming in by the millions. They're destroying our country. See you soon. Chris, just in terms of some of the statements of fact here, I mean, things like they're coming in by the millions. I mean, is it possible that we're going to see this year, based on the numbers already, over 1 million illegal crossings into this country all along the southern border? If you add it all up, do you think that's realistic?
I think with the numbers we've seen so far and the fact that number keeps rising, I think it's very possible that we'll actually break that mark. And the other number I think that doesn't get added into that is the amount of gotaways, the amount of people that get past us, that whether we know they're getting past us or not, because there's nobody available to apprehend them. And if you add that number in, that's just easy money. They're way past 1 million at that point.
I mean, give us some sense of, on a monthly basis, just in the Rio Grande sector, how many gotaways, which just means, right, somebody who made it free and clear into the U.S., ran across the border, and they're now doing whatever they're doing. What kind of estimates do we have for what that looks like just in your sector?
I think it depends on the number, who's giving you that number. If you ask the actual agency, the agency is going to say that number is maybe a 10, 15, 20% mark. If you ask an agent that works out there in the field, we're looking at maybe 45, 50% traditionally that gets away from us. So I think that's kind of the issue we're looking at. What's the official number going to be, and what actually happens down there. And you've seen the areas we work and check the foot sign, and you can tell that big groups have gotten through. It just seems to get downplayed somewhere along the way.
What is the situation of the holding facilities, by the way? When I was down there, you showed me the Donna facility. It looked like there was going to be some substantial expansion of what was already a vast facility in the first place. Are they still very full in and around McAllen? Are there new facilities that have been opened up? What's the situation there?
Our what they call the tent city, that was there. It was packed when you guys came. And what they did is HHS built some more tent facilities in the same area, in the same compound, and just moved them from one tent to another. So if you go into the Border Patrol facility, it doesn't look as bad because they're moving them out, but they're not really anywhere. They're not putting them anywhere but just another tent. They're just moving from one tent to the other, or they're moving into shelters across the country. So I think little by little we're starting to run tight on space again. I don't think we're going to be able to keep this whack-a-mole game going where we're just moving people around and trying to call it clean out when it's not.
And Chris, Vice President Kamala Harris visited El Paso and that border sector just last Friday. Is it the case that that's nowhere near as challenged as a security matter as McAllen, where you are? I mean, it seemed interesting to people. Why El Paso?
Yeah, I think, with all due respect to the agents out in El Paso, they work really hard and they're good at what they do. They're just not seeing the traffic that we're seeing out here. Not to mention Laredo, the Big Bend area. They out of all the Texas sectors, they're probably the slowest out of all the Texas sectors. So I don't think they're anywhere near anything what they see in weeks, we see in days. And it's a shame that's where she chose to go and make her appearance. I don't know why she did it, but it's not helping us down here. It's not bringing any attention to what's going on. And I think it's very difficult for to say that, hey, we're going to fix this when you won't even come take a look at it.
Has there been any change from the federal government on down that's affected the work that frontline agents for Border Patrol are doing? Has there been any additional support? Have they? I mean, I'm just going to, from the federal government side of this, the executive branch side, from Biden and Harris on down, what are they doing to help Border Patrol?
Nothing. We haven't seen anything. Maybe they opened up some other tents to house migrants somewhere else, but they haven't done anything to help us on a daily basis. And the rhetoric and the policies that they're either canceling from the last administration or putting in place from the new administration are actually working against us, and they're not helping us one bit.
Chris, thanks for the work you do. Thanks for joining us, sharing your expertise. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for having me.
All right, big tech is still up to its old tricks. This time has to do with a House race in Florida. In a moment, we'll discuss with congressional candidate Corey Mills how Twitter is trying to tilt the playing field in favor of his opponent. Big tech gets political again. They just can't help themselves. Twitter has denied Florida congressional candidate Corey Mills' request to verify his account, saying the tech giant had no problem verifying his Democratic opponent's account. So why do they give him a blue check mark but not one to Corey? Well, let's welcome in Corey, a combat veteran running for Florida's 7th district. Corey, thanks for being with us.
Well, thanks for having me.
All right, so just tell us what's going on here. You were denied by Twitter to get a blue check. You're running for Congress here. Are you able to appeal this, send another request? How does this work?
So, yeah, I'm technically able to appeal it, but here's the kind of caveat. They tell me that I'm not allowed to even reapply for verification for another 30 days. And every time they try to deny you, they go ahead and kick it down the road for another 30 days. As you know, 30 days in a campaign is a lifetime. That's a make it or break it. The whole idea that I could have been verified as media. I have my own publication with Newsmax that I do every single month. I'm on the John Bachman Show every single Monday. The fact that I'm a political contributor in itself technically meets the criteria. Now I'm actually an FEC registered Republican running for the 7th District of Florida, which is all the paperwork has been filed with the FEC, all verifiable. I have ballotpedia entries in there that verifies my run, but yet I don't meet the criteria.
Oh, and how does it actually affect your campaign that you're not? I mean, to people at home, a lot of them don't even have Twitter. They're like, what's the so what here? I mean, in media, we often talk about, the blue check mafia and everyone getting blue checks. What does it mean for you as a congressional candidate running for office as a Republican to be denied by one of the biggest social media companies in the world that blue check?
Well, again, I mean, does it actually impact my outreach to my followers or to my constituents? No, probably not so much. But does the blue check actually provide credibility in an equal and balanced platform when it comes to all of my competitors or any of my opposition or any of the Democrats who are getting it? But let's go even a step further, Buck. They verified a Chinese bot that had 10 followers, but they won't verify someone who's already submitted all the necessary paperwork. I've had numerous people DM me and send me emails saying that when I post links for my donations, and this is where the election interference piece comes in, when I post things for donating to my platform, my website, when they click on it, it says that the tweet's been deleted, but they can go into my actual page and then roll down and see that it's actually not a deleted tweet. So again, this is censorship and a bias towards conservatives, a military veteran, and someone who's been a media contributor for years now.
And what do you think is going on from Twitter side of it? Are you confident? Are you certain that this is really just about them taking it out on you, that you're a Republican, or you think there might just be some ineptitude or oversight here? I mean, what do you think's going on from Twitter's side of the table?
Well, again, I think that you have, just like anyone, you have employees who work for certain places who does have a bias. It may not be Jack Dorsey himself. I don't think I'm a big enough fish for him to be concerned with, but I think that we can't deny the fact that there has been a bias towards conservatives. There has been a bias towards the Republican Party. There has been censorship that has gone on, a denial of certain First Amendment rights. And I've been very vocal with the idea that I think the same way that Rockefeller had a monopoly and they had to utilize antitrust laws to break that apart, you have monopolies here. Mark Zuckerberg owns nearly every single social media platform. We know that he has the ability to shut down certain Twitter accounts like he did with President Trump, and he's able to create a single base narrative. And I think that this is a concern. And it's not something that we can look at under the Decency Communications Act. It's not something we can look at with a reform or an amendment to Section 230. We have to look at breaking up these big technocrat monopolies and start actually ensuring that there's a fair and balanced and unbiased media.
Governor DeSantis has signed a law that is supposed to stop this kind of censorship by big tech. It allows Floridians the right to sue these tech companies. Are you going to take any action like that?
Well, my campaign and I have not discussed any type of legal action. I certainly don't think that the way you cancel the cancel culture is by trying to cancel something in itself. But I do want to bring awareness, and I do want to make sure that people know whether we take that legal route down the road. I'm not saying that's completely off the table. And I'm hoping that, again, Twitter can take and get some notification to this and make sure they do the right thing, especially in creating a balanced platform for both conservatives and Democrats. But we haven't really made that decision at this time, but it's certainly something that we're looking into as that officially launches in July.
All right, Corey, thanks so much for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Buck.
After more than 2 years in prison, comedian Bill Cosby is a free man today. Yeah, we got more on that story when we come back. We're living in very uncertain times, and being prepared for the unknown is more important than ever. I'm sure you've noticed the world we live in today is anything but predictable. The government is passing massive spending bills. The Federal Reserve is printing trillions of dollars in fiat currency, and many experts are predicting inflation could run rampant in the coming months. That could spell disaster for the dollars in your bank account. We could all benefit from something a little more reliable right about now. Well, what could be more reliable than real gold and silver? I'm talking about real gold and silver you can actually hold right in your hands. Call the Oxford Gold Group right now and learn how easy it is to get real gold and silver sent securely directly to your home, or how you can have real gold and silver placed in your IRA or 401k. Just call the Oxford Gold Group at 833-600-GOLD and ask for your free guide on owning gold and silver. Again, call the Oxford Gold Group right now at 833-600-GOLD. The Oxford Gold Group is the only gold company I trust. Call them right now at 833-600-GOLD. One more time, that's 833-600-GOLD. Bill Cosby, the man once known as America's dad, was released from prison today after the Pennsylvania Supreme Court overturned his sex assault conviction. The 83-year-old Cosby was convicted in 2018 of drugging and molesting Temple University employee Andrea Constand at his home in 2004. The court overturned the verdict after finding an agreement with a previous prosecutor prevented him from being charged in the case. According to the Associated Press, quote, the court called Cosby's arrest an affront to fundamental fairness, particularly when it results in a criminal prosecution that was foregone for more than a decade. If you'll remember, Cosby was the first celebrity tried and convicted in the Me Too era. Some very important lessons here. Politics is not supposed to drive the judicial or prosecutorial process at all. Now, that means not bending rules. It means not giving extra punishment to somebody because of what the political climate may be. Everyone deserves a fair trial and to be judged by the same set of rules. And what seems to have happened here is that there was a moment of particularly powerful politics with regard to sexual misconduct because of Me Too, and a prosecutor decided that Bill Cosby was going to go to prison. They were going to find a way to do this, even if it meant changing some aspects of the actual system and the agreements itself. We have to be able to trust in the word of the system and in the rules put forth by it. They can't change them or break them based upon political whim, even in an instance like this, where it still seems very likely to anyone who is familiar with much of the evidence here that Bill Cosby was guilty of extreme and repeated sexual misconduct. But that doesn't mean that the people who are in charge of making these decisions and of putting him through the system are able to stack the deck. You may think, for example, just to put this in a different context, the police may think that they have a murderer in custody, and they could even be right. But what happens if they beat a confession out of him, or they plant a murder weapon on him just to make sure that they get that conviction that they know they so badly need? Well, the whole thing can get thrown out, right? The fruit of the poison tree doctrine means that if you have some aspect of the evidentiary process that is illicit, then it can actually affect the rest of its inclusion in the court and could even result in a case being dismissed. So Bill Cosby is a free man, not because he's a good man or an innocent man. He's a free man because the system decided that it wouldn't obey its own rules in order to get him. And it seems very likely that that was done because Me Too was very powerful at the time of Bill Cosby's trial. He was, along with Harvey Weinstein, one of the top targets of the Me Too era. And now he's a free man. In fact, not only did the Pennsylvania Supreme Court overturn his conviction, they've also barred him from future charges based upon that agreement with a prosecutor. I mean, think about it this way. If you could have somebody who agreed to a plea deal, which happens all the time, especially in federal cases, 95%, more like 97% of federal cases are plea bargain, federal criminal cases. If the federal government could say, oh, well, now we have your signed confession, forget about that plea bargain, we're just going to give you the maximum. Well, that would destroy faith and trust in the very system that we need in order to try to dispense justice. So the rules matter on their side as well, and that seems to be what happened here with Bill Cosby. One more late-breaking news story today was that former Secretary of Defense under two administrations, Donald Rumsfeld, a just long-standing figure in the top of Republican power politics in this country for decades. Don Rumsfeld has passed away. He is someone who is despised by the left, and it's very sad but not surprising to see how they're calling him a war criminal, and they're saying all kinds of things today that are just in such poor taste. But let's forget about that for a moment. Don Rumsfeld led a pretty extraordinary life, and also was somebody that I think, associate, at least those who are around my age, very much with the war on terror, the Iraq war in Afghanistan, the Bush administration. And the fact that we haven't thought much about Rumsfeld until today just goes to show you how much things have changed and how far we have moved from the period of time when the global war on terror was the single, not just biggest national security challenge we faced, but was really the biggest narrative, the biggest story of America for almost a decade. From 2001 to 2008, there was nothing to compare in terms of overall American attention, nothing to compare really with what was the global war on terror, the multiple wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And Don Rumsfeld, whether you agreed with him or not, was for a while a central player in all of that. People are going to be debating his legacy, especially on those issues, for many decades to come. And you may have even seen that in Afghanistan, there are some pretty severe warnings right now about a coming civil war as a result of the likely U.S. withdrawal under the Biden administration. But at least we're no longer in the midst of the global war on terror, and we can start to think about what the next era of American national security is really going to be all about. Hopefully, less foreign intervention, less wars of murky origin and uncertain purpose. But rest in peace, Don Rumsfeld, the man who was a patriot, who served his country, did his best, and from the times that I met him, I have to say, actually a pretty charming fellow. All right, that's going to be it for tonight's Hold the Line. The No Spin News with Bill O'Reilly is up next. Shields high.